I gotta give the Oregon fans a ton of credit. At least they live in reality and they know how poorly they looked in week 1. But going back to the main question and main focal point of this video, should we be concerned with Oregon? So heading into week 1, everybody and their mama was talking about the Clemson-Georgia game, the Notre Dame-Texas A&M game, how is Alabama going to look like with the new head coach and Kalen DeBoer, and so on and so on. Many other notable topics, for example, Florida-Miami, and the list goes on and on. But the last team in the last game that anybody was talking about was the Oregon Ducks versus the Fighting Potato Wedges in Idaho. Nobody was talking about that game because why would we? It's Idaho. Oregon's going to blow them out by 50. Oregon's supposed to have one of the better head coaches in the game. They got Dillon Gabriel, great quarterback, great wide receivers. They're just a much better team. But just like Lee Corso says, not so fast, my friend. Come to find out, the Oregon and Idaho game wound up being one of the biggest storylines from week 1. And it's not for a good reason, especially if you're an Oregon fan. It's due to the fact that Idaho actually gave them a good fight. This game in the fourth quarter was Oregon 17, Idaho 14. And it had one of the more bizarre box scores you're ever going to see because Dillon Gabriel wound up finishing 41 for 49. Dang near had 400 passing yards. He played great, and they were in a competitive game with Idaho. If you're anything like myself and you saw the box score before you even watched the film or watched the game, you're probably thinking, what in the crap happened? I wound up watching the film on this game early Sunday morning, and come to find out, there's a good explanation. Their offensive line sucked. It was pathetic. They couldn't run block, they couldn't pass block, but more importantly, and so we're about to get into, they couldn't bully Idaho. The fact you can't push around and just run all over the Idaho defense, it's concerning. And it's not because Oregon didn't show up in this game, because they did. It wasn't some fluky game where they had like some bad bounces go against them. They had 4 to 5 turnovers. No, it wasn't anything like that. As a matter of fact, I'm curious. Let me go back to the box score and see how many turnovers Oregon actually had. I know they didn't get a couple of fourth downs, but that's not some turnover. It's not like a scoop and score or a pick 6. All right, I'm pulling the box score up right here. Oregon wound up having, okay, they had 1 turnover. Idaho, who had a chance to win this game, wound up having 2 turnovers. Idaho only had 10 first downs. Oregon had 31. Oregon was 7 for 16 on third downs. That's pretty solid. And dang near had 500 total yards. But it goes back to they had a couple of failed fourth down conversions where they couldn't bully Idaho's defensive line. And then the offensive line also is getting some penalties. So I'm asking each and every single one of you, please let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Should we be concerned with this Oregon football team? I'm not going to push a panic button quite just yet, but on a scale of 1 to 10, my concern level is already at a 5. And it just goes back to this, and I hate to repeat myself, but you couldn't bully Idaho? This Saturday night, they do have a matchup at 9 p.m., so we got a nice little Pac-12 after dark game with Boise State. Let's pull that up while we're at it. I have no idea how much Oregon is going to be favored by or is favored by. I'd like to assume they're probably like a 10-point favorite, bare minimum. Trying to find it's all the way at the bottom. Okay, Oregon is a whopping 21.5-point favorite. Considering how poorly they played against Idaho, I don't know why anybody would take the over on that. But I think some people could use the logic of, oh, well, they're going to try to make a statement, and they probably will. No disrespect to Boise State, but they're not anything special. It's kind of a similar game to Idaho. They should go in there and take care of business. For some context, Boise State gave up 45 in their season opener to Georgia Southern. So if I'm the Oregon offensive coordinator, I would say that's the bare minimum. We should score 45. But going back to the main question and main focal point of this video, should we be concerned with Oregon? Teams that don't have good or great offensive lines, it's not going to come back to bite them in the butt in a game against Boise State, Idaho, or even UCLA, who they also play early on in the season. But it comes back to bite you in the butt when you play a team like Michigan or Ohio State. For me personally, I didn't understand the Oregon hype heading into this season. Everybody and their mama had them ranked ahead of Alabama, had them in their top 3 or 4. Which I don't think there's anything wrong with putting them in the top 10, but the top 3 or 4, that was too much for me. And the reasoning for that is because Dan Lanning hasn't won a big football game. Got blown out by Kirby Smart a couple years ago, and last year he couldn't even beat Washington once. He played them twice. And the sad part about that is from top to bottom, that Oregon team was more talented than the Washington team, and they beat you twice. So you know where I'm going with this. I'm not the biggest fan of Dan Lanning. Dillon Gabriel, big fan of him. I think he's an outstanding quarterback. He's one of the better quarterbacks in all college football. Wide receivers, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, love both of them. Running back play is solid, but think about everything I just listed off. Great quarterback play, good wide receiver play, good running backs. Oregon's been known for that for years. I'm talking about years and years and years. The one area of the game that Oregon has never exceeded in is the trenches. And I am extremely close to go as far as saying they're a soft football team. Oregon's known to be the run and gun, offensive shootout type of team. Yeah, we may give up 40 on defense, but we're going to score 50 on offense. Therefore, what's been their biggest kryptonite? When they play a hard-nosed physical football team. They struggle with that, and their offensive line is so bad, I don't know if they have time to fix it. I know what some of you may be sitting there saying, Matt, what do you mean don't know if they have time to fix it? This season just started, and that's a great point, but I have an even better rebuttal. The college football season, the regular season at least, is only what? 12, 13 weeks? You had from March up until now, which is roughly 6 months, to jail. And if you couldn't jail in 6 months, why would I believe you're going to jail within the next 2 or 3? Last year on offense, this Oregon football team was highly penalized, and it's looking like they're going to be a highly penalized football team this year. I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction, but it's hard not to after seeing that film. It's not going to happen against Boise State because, come on, man, it's Boise State. But these guys are going to get eaten alive when they play a top 10, and I mean a real top 10 college football team. And I tell you what, that Ohio State front seven is going to eat their lunch if they keep this up. By the way, I've been keeping up with their practices this week because I thought they might make some changes. Nope. Guess what? They're keeping everything the same. Boise State's defense is quite literally one of the worst in the nation. And I'm here to tell you right now, if you can't line up and get easily 275 rushing yards against them, you might as well just pack up this season. Because the rest of the season, it's not going to be pretty. Sure, Dillon Gabriel might be able to throw for 400 yards per game, but you got to be able to run the ball a little bit. And to go on top of that, let's talk about it. Gabriel had 400 yards against Idaho, and you almost lost that one. We haven't even talked about this, and this is a great point I almost forgot to bring up and mention. What if Gabriel doesn't have a good game? Because you're a quarterback. I don't care if it's freaking Caleb Williams. We saw with him last year. He's not going to play good every single Saturday. He's going to slip up. What if Gabriel against Idaho would have played just mediocre, 1 touchdown, 1 INT? They more likely would have lost. You know that's going to happen this year. So can the offensive line and run game step it up? I don't know. As where it stands right now, I don't believe they can. It puts so much strain and pressure on Gabriel. That's not what you want. You don't want your starting quarterback thinking heading into a ball game, oh, crap, I got to throw for 425 yards and 5 touchdowns just for us to have a chance. Here's my next question. How much of the blame do we need to start putting on Dan Lanning? This is now what, his 3rd year at Oregon? It's time to put up or shut up. Yeah, last year was okay, nice little season, but you need to start competing for, well, not even for championships. You need to make a playoff first. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a Dan Lanning hater by any stretch of imagination. I just don't care for the guy like everybody else. He's okay, he doesn't rub me the wrong way, but I just can't fathom why everybody's so in love with him. What has he done? Nothing. Very rarely heading into a college football game am I looking forward to seeing how the offensive line is going to play. I don't know if I've ever been excited or looked forward to watching an offensive line play in general, but I am this Saturday night. That is the only thing I'm paying attention to because I know how good Gabriel is. I know how good the running backs and wide receivers are. I want to see the O-line step up and impress me. And the sad part about it is all these Oregon fans are even more pissed off than me because I've had a bunch of them tweet at me last week saying, Matt, you need to make a separate video just roasting us. That's how bad it was. I don't know if I've ever had a fan base tweet at me multiple times saying, Matt, you need to make a video just talking down on us. That's how pathetic we were. I got to give the Oregon fans a ton of credit. At least they live in reality and they know how poorly they looked in week 1. They understand it. We look like dog crap and this ain't going to cut it. In sports, I believe the second best thing that can happen to you is learning a lot from a loss. The first best thing is learning a lot from a win. It's not too often you can learn a lot about your football team in a win, but Oregon's in that situation. The good news is you won the game and you know what you need to work on and you know what you need to fix. The biggest question, and we're going to find out in about 48 hours, is if you fixed that. I guess we shall wait and we shall see. I'm curious. Let me know your thoughts down below. But Romany.